Congratulations to all of us, and Burns, my ass is cold.
And from this day forward, this is going to be a different university.
Our facilities are going to be as good as anybody's and better than most. And it's all going to happen pretty darn quick.
Oklahoma, Boone Pickens.
Running the program, Boone Pickens, sir.
And we're going to solve our problem. We will solve our problem.
I feel like right now, I and the rest of my audience would follow you out the building. That is the way you're talking.
Are we in Boone Pickens Stadium?
Are you Boone Pickens?
Yes, I'm home.
Let's all march together at Oklahoma State. Academically and athletically, we are all together.
About that. Hello, everyone.
As you can tell, this is going to be more of a pep rally than a memorial. We're going to celebrate a great man who loved his school. So today is not a somber occasion. Today is a day we celebrate our #1 fan, the leader of the band, and a man who left us better than he found us, didn't he? Boone Pickens was one of a kind. We have a great program for you today, celebrating a truly great life. You will hear from our leader, President Burns Hargis. You will also hear from the governor of the great state of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt. You will hear from the head coach of the Cowboys, Mike Gundy. From the incomparable Ann Greenwood. That will be fun. And you'll hear from our athletic director, Mike Holder. Now, one note that I want to pass along. Our greatest walking billboard, Ricky Fowler, had an unforeseen conflict arise and was not able to join us here today. He sends his regard and his love for Mr. Pickens. They created a great friendship through the years, and he will continue to be priceless for our university. Isn't he priceless when he wears his orange on Sundays, has that Pistol Pete on the bag? So we appreciate Ricky Fowler. Now, please join me in welcoming a man who is proud of the title he earned as the former Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court. But you know what? He's just as proud to be called Boone's friend. Please welcome the Honorable Stephen Taylor for our invocation.
I stand here to honor my friend Boone. We gather on this campus because Boone profoundly changed this university, not only with his generosity, but also his inspiration to all of us to step up and make this place better than we found it. Please join me in prayer for Boone. Dear God, today we celebrate the life of Boone Pickens. Our prayer is that we never give up on our dreams, our hopes, our happiness, that we never give up on love, the goodness of people, the greatness of our country, that we never give up on freedom and our faith, and never give up on ourselves, never. Do all this in memory of Boone Pickens, as you say to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Boone loved this place. He made a difference, and his legacy will live forever. I pray that every once in a while, God will allow Boone to reach down and push us to work harder, to be better, to get up earlier, and to step up to the challenges that face us every day. God bless Thomas Boone Pickens. God knows he was a good man, and now may the Lord bless him, keep him, give him the peace, reward, and rest that he has earned. And in Boone's memory, we pray that God give us courage, wisdom, and strength, that he walk with our every step, that we have love and peace in our lives forever and ever, world without end. Amen and amen.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that message. Thank you so much, and that prayer. So I stand here today a prouder OSU Cowboy because of Boone Pickens. Who's with me? He truly transformed our university, and he also changed our mindset. I want to give you one stat. In our history, we have had 44 gifts of $5 million or more. In our history, 44. 43 of those were given after Boone gave his initial gift of $20 million to the football stadium. Now that's leadership, and that's inspiring others, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? Now, on a personal note, about 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with throat cancer. And, when that news hits you, there's fear, but there's also this desire to attack it, to get after it, to attack what's attacking you. And when I had that fear and I had a lot of people talking to me, I realized I needed to go to a center of excellence like MD Anderson. So I went to talk to Coach Holder. Coach, you'll remember this. I came to Coach Holder's office and I said, Coach, I've got one chance at this. I want to walk my daughter Lauren down the aisle. I want to grow old with my beautiful wife, Jimmy. I want to be here at Oklahoma State calling games, and I feel like I need to call in a favor. We need to call our top supporter in Boone Pickens. And Coach Holder said, Larry, you're absolutely right. So we're in his office, and we called Boone, and I explained the situation to him after Coach Holder initially got him on the phone. And here's what Boone said to me. He said, Larry, I would have been mad at you if you hadn't called me. And by the way, I gave them $50 million. I said, yes, sir. I knew you might know somebody down there. And he said, absolutely. And he assured me, he said, Larry, he goes, I'm glad you called. By the end of the day, you will have a phone call from MD Anderson and you will be in good hands. That was such a relief to me. And I left Coach Holder's office and I drove to Tulsa to meet with a couple of our great supporters. By the time I got to the outskirts of Tulsa, I had a phone call from MD Anderson and we were getting a plan of attack in order. And I can tell you that I'm now standing here 4 years and 8 months cancer-free because of the prayer posse, a lot of you, and because of my friend Boone Pickens. So thank you, Mr. Pickens. I am forever indebted to you. Aren't we blessed that Boone Pickens is one of us? We are so blessed that he's one of us, and we're also blessed that our leader is one of us. Please welcome the president of Oklahoma State University, President Burns Hargis.
And we're blessed that Texas A&M cut his scholarship. So let's have a moment of silence for Texas A&M. Well, on behalf of the Boone Pickens family, on behalf of the first cowgirl of Oklahoma State and the entire Cowboy Nation, welcome. Thank you for being here. I think we can all agree that Boone Pickens was a legend, he was a change agent, and he was a life force that doesn't come along very often. And speaking of change agents, we have another cowboy doing just that, who's riding herd on the great state of Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome OSU alum and governor of the state of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. To the friends and family of T. Boone Pickens, welcome home. Home to the state that T. Boone loved and the state where he built a legacy that will inspire many generations to come. While my good friend, Texas Governor Abbott, felt the need to ask God for forgiveness last week that T. Boone Pickens was born in Oklahoma, we know that Pickens thought differently about our great state. You see, in Oklahoma, we like to be a little more practical and remind Texas that Oklahoma is a step above. And even though Pickens was the only person in history who could successfully straddle the Red River, I have to think that his allegiance is a little bit favored here in Oklahoma. Why is that? Because when T. Boone would speak of his hometown of Holdenville, Oklahoma, he would beam with pride and say, where the pavement ends, the West begins, and the Rock Island crosses Frisco. I don't know about you, but down in Dallas, I sure see a lot of pavement, Governor Abbott. But up here, Boone knew this is where the true West began. As an Oklahoma son with a pioneering spirit, T. Boone was both plain speaking and impactful. Perhaps some might say he and Will Rogers are two of the greatest Oklahomans to ever live. Well, Will Rogers once said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. T. Boone Pickens shared this wisdom, but delivered it with a little more backwoods flavor. He said, if you're gonna run with the big dogs, you have to get out from under the porch. And much like Will Rogers, Boone had a strong words of advice for today's politicians. He said, a plan without action is not a plan, it's a speech. Even as he wrote his final words before leaving this earth, T. Boone reminded us, don't look to government to solve problems. The strength of this country is in its people. He couldn't have been more right. Our strength today as America and as the great state of Oklahoma is right here, right in front of me in this room. It's you, it's our people. T. Boone's passion for people, and particularly for the next generation of Americans, was evident in all that he did. He often had the opportunity to speak to students at commencement ceremonies all across the country, where he would put a grand offer on the table for these young people to consider. T. Boone would ask kids to raise their hands if they would like to have all of his wealth and his success, his Gulfstream on the ramp, his 68,000-acre ranch. But this offer came with one catch. Any kid who would take this grand bargain would also have to exchange places in age. They would become 90 years old, and T. Boone would get a chance to do it over again. Experience every opportunity America has to offer. It's your turn now, T. Boone Pickens would say as he inspired young generations that their greatest years were ahead. And because of his love for Oklahoma's next generation, he also ensured that they had access to every opportunity for a bright future. Over the course of his life, T. Boone's giving knew no bounds. Of the $1 billion he joyfully gave, $652 million came to Oklahoma State University, split almost equally between athletics and academics. T. Boone bled orange, and it's why you could see many Polk fans on game days proudly wearing Boone Pickens is my homeboy t-shirts. You know, OSU has undergone a transformation since my time as a college student here. Boone believed that athletics was the front porch to a university. I graduated from Oklahoma State in the lean pre-Boone Pickens days of 1996, and let me tell you something. I love our new front porch. And even beyond the stadium, you can see T. Boone's transformational generosity all across our campus. We can be confident that his legacy will live on with each cowboy and cowgirl win, and with each future leader that crosses the stage with a diploma in hand. Thank you, Boone. Speaking of generosity, next month, another piece of legacy will return to the state of Oklahoma. You see, back in September of 2018, almost exactly a year ago, I made a trip down to Dallas to visit T. Boone in his office. I was running for governor at the time, and the public polls were showing me tied in the race, and I thought I would travel down there and get some free advice from T. Boone. As we entered his office, he invited me to sit down at his conference table. I was thrilled to be meeting with the T. Boone Pickens. But at the same time, I must confess, I was a little distracted by the beautiful handcrafted conference table. I mean, it was the nicest piece of furniture I'd ever seen. As we sat there, T. Boone gave me 3 pieces of wisdom that I'm not going to forget. Number 1, he said, be willing to make decisions. Or as he said it to me that day, you can ready, aim, but eventually you've got to fire. And number 2, he said, learn from your mistakes, because Kevin, you're going to make a bunch of them. I told Boone, I said, speaking of mistakes, when I was first starting out in business, I wrote you a letter asking you to invest in me and my mortgage company. You politely declined, and I said that was a big mistake. And he laughed and he said, I got 50 of those letters a month from OSU students wanting me to invest in stuff. And number 3, he said, be humble and hold fast to faith, as it is the compass that guides us even in dark times. This was the one that resonated with me the most. It reminds me of Matthew 16:26. For what would it profit a man if he gains the whole world and yet loses his soul? Boone understood and lived this principle. Well, when the meeting was finished, T. Boone, who'd seen me admiring his coffee table, He told me there were only 2 tables in the world like this. I was sitting at one, and the other one was at the White House. I could never have imagined that day that this historic piece of furniture would come full circle. And I'm grateful for the Pickens family and the Humphreys family who are donating it for a season to the governor's conference room and my cabinet room in the state capitol. I know T. Boone has shared many sage words with the world throughout his life, but he spoke directly to my heart that day. Remember, I wasn't even governor yet, and I didn't know what the future was going to hold, neither did T. Boone, but he never missed an opportunity to speak to people, to encourage them, to set expectations, that they too could be future leaders. May we all treat our children, our neighbors, and even a stranger with that same standard. It's a gift that we can pass on to each other to honor his legacy. T. Boone is also credited with the quote, "Work 8 hours and sleep 8 hours. Just make sure they're not the same 8 hours." And I think it's safe to say that T. Boone did more with his allotted time than just about anybody ever has. So here we are. T. Boone's final journey has brought him back to his first home, to rest in the great state of Oklahoma. What a life well lived. Just like T. Boone, I'm proud to be an American, but I thank God that I was raised in Oklahoma. So God bless T. Boone Pickens, and God bless the great state of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Governor, for those words, and we are so proud you're one of us. So thank you for being here today. All right. This next group began in the fall of 2013 with a performance at Finals Week and features a variety of majors and a variety of ages from across our campus. They have become a beloved tradition at Oklahoma State, and you will love them today. So as they set up, let's give a warm welcome for Polka Pella.
Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, and the waving weed ashore smells sweet. The wind comes right behind the rain. We're singing Oklahoma, Oklahoma every night. Honey, lamb, and I sit alone and talk and watch the hawk is lazy. Circles in the sky, yes, we know we belong to the land, and the land we belong to is grand. So when we say, ow, ayi-yip-ayo-ee-ay, ow, we're only saying you're doing fine, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, O-K-L-A-H-O-M-A, Oklahoma. Okay, sing.
Governor, thank you for your comments. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the First Lady's hair being with us today as well. You know, one of Boone's main rules that he always would repeat to me is when you're hunting elephants, don't get distracted chasing rabbits. And he hunted some elephant-sized projects in his lifetime. When you think about it, whether it was exercising shareholder rights or promoting energy independence with the Pickens Plan, or what few people know, but there he just mentioned that he's given $50 million toward a cure for cancer. He really transformed America in many ways, and he sure enough transformed Oklahoma State. You know, his mother always told him to never forget where you come from. And Boone never forgot Holdenville, and he certainly never forgot Oklahoma State. He really made Oklahoma State a household name with all his national media appearances, always wearing his trademark orange tie. That did a lot for the reputation of our university. He really did dream big. As the governor said, like $652 million worth of big. He was very competitive. He always wanted to improve and make more competitive our academics and our athletic programs. His first $1 million was given to the Pickens School of Geology, which was not called that at the time, because that's where he earned his degree. On his 80th birthday in 2008, 2 months after we got here, Ann and I got here, or 3 months, I guess, he gave $100 million in matching gifts for endowed chairs. And those chairs were in the name of the donors that his money matched. It didn't even have his name on it. And then a couple of years later, he gave about $120 million for scholarships. He's very generous in many other ways. You know, every kid that grew up on his ranch could go to college anywhere they wanted to on his dime. He paid for it. And one day, his longtime assistant, Sally, called and said, Mr. Pickens wants to talk to you. That usually wasn't good news. And so he gets on the phone, and it wasn't about how the kids, how's the family, how about those Cowboys. It was, Sally tells me I'm paying out-of-state tuition for these kids. And I said, well, they're Boone, they're out of state. They're from your ranch. And he said, well, good Lord, how much money do I have to give up there to get in-state tuition? And I started explaining to him that he gave for faculty chairs, he gave for these kind of scholarships, he really didn't give the money, and then click, the phone hung up, and that was... Just hope he gets over it. But the matching of the faculty chairs and the student scholarships were real game changers, as much as his gifts improved athletics. Those gifts, really, maybe his biggest gift was, as Steve mentioned in his invocation, the inspiration that he provided to the university and to our donors. Just imagine, since he gave that $100 million gift, we have now raised in cash and pledges over $2 billion. We have, that's from approximately 70,000. Now, Governor, a lot of that are pledges, so we still might need money, from the state. But 70,000 new donors. Our endowment here at the university is more than doubled, and we've added about 200 new 1 million plus donors. So clearly, Boone's impact, his inspiration, has gone way beyond his own gifts. He really has inspired our university forever. He got the ball rolling, and it's our job to honor his legacy by keeping it going. And that's what we're going to do. And among the many generous and passionate donors that have given to the university are the Greenwoods, Ann and Mike Greenwood. The Greenwoods have touched this university in so many ways. What I love about their gifts is they tend to support things that other people don't support as well. A good example is the Greenwood Tennis Center right up the road here. We will be hosting the national championship, the NCAA championship next year because we have that new tennis center here. They've helped the library, they helped the marching band, and on, but right now, the new Greenwood School of Music is coming out of the ground right next to the new McKnight Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ann Greenwood.
Thank you, President Hargis. I have to tell you, I am completely honored, and I am so proud to be here on this day where we celebrate the life of Mr. Pickens. His was indeed a life well lived, where he worked in so many ways to serve and make our world a better place. We've all heard about and seen the level of his generosity, which has touched every corner of our campus. But Boone's impact goes so far beyond his actual dollar commitments to our alma mater. The impact of his remarkable life, the way he has inspired so many people with his vision, his philanthropy, can never, ever really even be measured. And I'd like to share with you just one example today on a very personal level of the everlasting impact that he's had. I would like to share with you a story of how he changed the life of Michael and Ann Greenwood as philanthropists. Like many of you here today, we had always admired and we'd certainly appreciated the level of support that he'd given our beloved Oklahoma State University. It was quite obvious Boone felt a deep desire to give back to the university that he loves so much. Also, like Michael and I, he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot OSU and felt that his life had been completely impacted by this university. We too, Mike and I, have came to realize how very important it is for us to give back to OSU in our own ways. We feel and share Boone's deep appreciation to Oklahoma State, and we have a huge desire to make it be the best university it can possibly be. Like many donors, we had made donations for student scholarships, for program support, but we were waiting to make our big last large gifts through our estate plan. But right here on the campus, on the OSU library lawn, as we were all here gathered to celebrate Boone's 80th birthday, he made a statement that forever changed the life of Michael and Ann Greenwood. Sorry. He said, quite simply, "I don't understand why people wait until they're gone to give back so they can't see the difference that they have made." That profound statement absolutely struck a chord with us, and Mike and I thought about it, and you know what? He was exactly right. That's exactly what we were doing with our planned giving. We decided that we both agreed. He was also absolutely right that the time to give to OSU is now, not later, so that we can see the impact that we've had. And you know what? Now, because of Boone, Mike and I have the chance to see the difference we can make, and it's extraordinarily rewarding. And again, we only made that change because the inspiration he gave us that day as we all celebrated his 80th. Gracious as always, he sent a personal thank you to Mike and I after our first major gift. Luckily, during the next football game, we had a chance to speak with him, and we said we should be thanking him, that his comments, his statements that day were indeed the inspiration behind our giving. We thought it was so important that he understood the impact he'd had on our life, on the life of Mike and Ann Greenwood, and how he was reaching so many thousands of loyal OSU supporters, and we believe he was genuinely touched. Mike always never let me forget that that day, what we heard at that birthday celebration was a life changer and a game changer, and we owe it all to Boone. One thing he did, Mr. Pickens always gave with the hope that his gifts would inspire others to join him, and they absolutely did. The vision and his inspiration has forever changed all of our lives for the better. Boone was absolutely not afraid to dream big, as we've heard today, and you can see it all over our campus. He instilled in my husband, Mike, and I the desire to also dream big, to not only get to see the change, but to be the change. He was indeed a difference maker, and may we never, ever forget his remarkable donations to Oklahoma State University. He showed us the way, he taught us how to dream big, and he taught us to never stop trying to make a difference. Following Boone's lead, all of our lives have been forever changed. Along with all of you here today, I am so grateful for this remarkable life, this remarkable man, whose life was so remarkable and touched so many and benefited so many, including my own. Mike and I are forever grateful for his remarkable and amazing support of our beloved Oklahoma State University. And so today, I say thank you, Mr. Pickens, for being our guiding light, who has shown us all how to live orange. Thank you.
He's thought of as this industry titan, a corporate raider, cutthroat businessman. I know him as a friend and as just a good man.
Well, he's a legend. He's a change agent, a life force that rarely come along.
He's one of those great, big, dynamic people. He's kind of one of those swashbucklers out of our history that is a pioneer in their own right in multiple areas.
I think he's probably bigger than a legend, whatever that is. You can't paint a picture too big for Boone Pickens.
And remember, he comes from an Oklahoma upbringing in a very small town to a gigantic reputation that still has that small town influence on him.
Holdenville had a profound effect on Boone's life. The community, and it was kind of a Norman Rockwell idyllic place in his memory. And of course his mother and his grandmother and his aunt all kind of lived there together.
He considers that to be where his values were formed.
Boone can just keep you mesmerized with stories of Holdenville and small town America.
And he did something, some act of kindness.
He had a big paper route, the biggest paper route in town.
Paper routes and finding a wallet and taking it to the person that owned it, and they gave him $1.
The gentleman was so appreciative that he gave him, I can't remember how much.
He went home and was real proud and told his mama, you know, what he'd done.
Didn't go over as he expected.
And his mother made him take the $1 back. You shouldn't get paid for doing the right thing.
By the time he got back on his bicycle and was heading back to give the money back, it started raining.
There's a million stories like that.
And that's the way he was brought up.
One thing about him, he never forget where he came from. He's carried Holdenville with him wherever he's gone.
It really shaped him, and I think it manifested itself in the whole concept of honor.
He came out with those values. And, you know, and I'd say he probably was little influenced by power and money. Little influenced by power and money.
Boone is a very honorable man. He keeps his word. That's a quality, I think, that his mom and his rest of his family instilled in him, and he never forgot it.
Ethics and your word and your promises, they meant something to him.
He's a stand-up guy, honest as the day is long.
Boone Pickens never skirted the law because his theory was, and it was the old Holdenville rule, your word is your bond. That's the way he operated.
He said his mother always told him, don't forget where you came from. He always honored that advice.
Thomas Boone Pickens Sr. Boone loves to tell the story about his dad impressing on him that a fool with a plan can go a lot further than a man without a plan. You got to be disciplined, and he drilled that into Boone.
A lot of who Boone is today probably is out of respect and admiration for his father. Had a big influence on his life.
He went off to Texas A&M on a basketball scholarship and got cut from the basketball team, a $25 a month scholarship, and they cut him.
So he looked for another school similar to Texas A&M where he could play basketball, and ended up being here with Mr. Iba. We were real lucky that Boone Pickens decided to go to Oklahoma State.
And he's always laughing about how they probably regret that decision. That cost them a whole lot more than $25 a month.
When you list unfortunate things you may have done in life, Texas A&M surely should have that at the top of their list.
And then was married and had a child, and he had to get down to work because his dad told him, you've got to have a plan.
Boone Pickens made his money in oil, building up Mesa Petroleum into the largest independent oil and gas producer in the country.
He's a visionary. There's not many of those coming around anymore. And he actually put it on the line, was willing to take criticism. You know, it was okay.
He had a maverick kind of bent to him, and he was really good at finding oil. You know, for a long time, he was considered a boy genius for building Mesa Petroleum out of really nothing.
He has all the best qualities of every successful coach that I've ever read about or known about, leading people and inspiring people.
He was the voice of energy.
You know, he was called on by all the news channels, what do you think? Because he had that gray hair, because he'd proven that he'd take a risk, because he was successful in almost everything that he ever tried.
T. Boone Pickens, a name that strikes fear in corporate boardrooms.
Several months, you've already become acquainted with a man who is really a buccaneer on Wall Street.
Fear not, we'll remain active in pursuing corporate takeovers. The oil patch has been worn.
When he started in on taking over companies that he felt were underperforming, of course, everybody did everything they could to disparage him, calling him corporate raider and all the rest.
Why isn't it fair just to say that you're a bandit, that you're just a raider? Well, I think that's very unfair because we haven't run in and grabbed a large stack of cash and run off with it. Here, we went out and invested $1 billion.
No, I don't think he was a corporate raider. He was a shareholder activist. He understood that the companies belonged to the shareholders.
He took over those companies with the idea that I am going to put value back in the common stock. And that's what he did in every case. And of course, he got wealthy doing it because he owned a lot of the stock. But all the shareholders got wealthy at the same time.
And then he morphed into basically an environmentalist with the Pickens plan.
The race is on to find a cleaner fuel to promote natural gas as the natural alternative to gasoline.
He was a visionary on alternative energies in terms of how you could utilize them as well as carbon energy.
I couldn't count the number of times he said, we need a plan. We don't have a plan. We've never had an energy plan. And so his energy plan was the Pickens plan, to shed our dependence on foreign oil and gas and be self-dependent. For the first time, Oklahoma State had the equal or better facilities than anybody in college football. And I think the one-loss record proves that it had a big effect.
He set a great example. He gave it an unprecedented level, made the largest gift in the history of college athletics, and changed everybody's thinking about Oklahoma State University and what was possible.
Facilities don't transform things, people do.
Boone didn't just build a football stadium. He empowered academic excellence at Oklahoma State.
I know that he's given north of $500 million. I don't really know if you could quantify the impact that's had on our institution and on the state of Oklahoma.
It's amazing, really. It's historic what he's done. Nobody's done what Boone did. It's $500 million. Nobody's even close.
Do you know anybody at other universities that have been as dominant as he has been at Oklahoma State? Nobody.
He wanted to enjoy the fun of giving away money and seeing what happened with that money. Scholarships, football stadiums, engineering schools, hospitals.
He was very visible on campus. I think that endeared him to the students. Everywhere he'd go, they'd cheer him. I mean, it was just really special to watch. I think Boone Pickens restored the pride in Oklahoma State.
His magnanimity and his willing to give of everything that he's earned to create a future for other people.
Well, he's the best friend that I've got in the whole world, and he's the best friend that anyone could have, in good times or bad times.
He loves his family. He loves his friends. He is loyal. Kind.
Just think about the people that call Boone a friend. They don't call him a friend because he's got money or because he's powerful. They call him a friend because of who he is and how he does what he does and how he's considerate of other people.
I'll give you an example of the kind of friend he is. I was assigned to preside over the Oklahoma City bombing trial. And that was a huge undertaking for me. Personally, professionally. One day he called me, I'll never forget. I said, Boone, I can't talk very long, and I'm getting ready to go in the courtroom. And he said, well, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. When you go out there, just know I'm thinking about you. At that time, he was very busy with BP Capital, and I had a whole lot more on his mind than worrying about Steve Taylor. But he did, and that's just an example of the kind of friend he is, the kind of a loving, caring, thoughtful person. And people don't know that about him.
Boone loves to fish and hunt.
And he bought a pretty good-sized place there north of Pampa years and years ago. Then just slowly added to it and added and added.
He shares what is one of his most prized possessions of hunting, of great hospitality. And you don't hear anybody that came away from there that didn't think more about Boone because he actually shared. And he shared himself.
He had a big jet and he had a beautiful home in Dallas and he had his business and all the investments that he worked on, but that ranch was really home to him.
Those are times that I remember just riding around out there at the ranch with him and talking about all kinds of things, not about business, not about, but just talking about politics. He always had an opinion about everything, believe it or not.
That ranch, in many ways, as Holdenville kind of defined his start, that ranch kind of defined who he was.
He enjoys that legend status. He enjoys the fame, the celebration of his life, because he's proud of it. He's very proud of what he accomplished in his life.
He was just an old country boy from Holdenville, Oklahoma, but I can tell you he could think his way around a Nobel Prize winner.
He led by example. I think he's a perfect example of everything's good about our country and the values that have made us the greatest country in the world. That's all right there front and center with Boone Pickens. When he comes on campus here, it lifts him up. It's one of the reasons when his time comes, he wants to be buried here because this is the place that gave him his start.
I see him as a friend and a great man that this country should be very, very proud of.
And now when I talk about Boone, I say I love Boone Pickens. I really do.
Great piece. Now a man who needs no introduction, but I'm kind of all about introductions, so he is the man who has led us to unprecedented and consistent success on the football field. Please welcome the head coach of the Cowboys, Mike Gundy.
Good job. Good job. Hard act to follow. I don't quite have the high dollar stuff like the governor had, so a little different here. When they first asked me to speak of this, obviously I was very honored with Mr. Pickens and to be up here with this group. But what do you say about somebody who's lived the life that he has been so world-renowned for 60 years and been on every show and everybody knows about him and what he is? So I thought I would just share some of the things that he has instilled in me and the conversations that he and I have had that have meant so much to me. And when we lost him, it was sad because he's just always been there as a mainstay. No matter what, we could go to him if we had a problem and he'd fix it. Sometimes it'd be a little tough, but he'd fix it. So the other day, one of my sons, my young one, the 14-year-old, he's the one that always wants to know why and always wants answers to everything. So he texts me in the morning when he was supposed to be in school, which I'm sure he was, but he was texting anyway. And he says, did Mr. Pickens pass away? And I said, yes. I texted him back. I said, yes, Gage. He passed away earlier this morning. Aren't you in class? And he said, yes, I'm in class. Well, who's going to be the boss now? And I said, what? And he said, well, who's going to be the boss now that Mr. Pickens is gone? And I said, well, I guess these guys will have to pick up the slack. So anyway, my first encounter with Mr. Pickens was during his visits to campus, this part of campus, in the early 2000s. He was walking around a lot with his entourage, with the group that's here today. And he was just kind of like taking mental notes. And I was an assistant coach. And somebody said, Mr. Pickens is going to be here today. Do you want to walk around and get to know him? I said, sure, it's awesome. So I would walk around and listen to him. And he was looking at facilities. And little did I know what his plans were at that time. But I noticed right away in spending time just listening to him, where he had acknowledged me because of who I was, I'm sure, as a player. But anything else, I was just glad to be in the group and listen. And that he was all business when it came to something that he had in his mind, his vision. So I just kind of sit back and listen to him when he walked and he would talk. And I noticed right away that no task was too tall for him. And I didn't know the value or exactly what his goals were or how powerful he was at that time. Not necessarily with wealth, but just to be able to accomplish anything, essentially what other people couldn't accomplish. It was never an issue for Mr. Pickens. And that he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Because some of the people that we were walking around with, I would hear him say, well, we can't do that because they own this property. We don't own this property. The city owns this property. We can't do that. And I don't remember word for word, but it was something like, I don't care. We will find a way. And then other people that were trying to make rational decisions based on laws said, this is other people's property, and even though that we need this property, he said everything's for sale. And they said, well, you're probably right. And I remember him saying in certain words, I know I'm right. Everything's for sale. That vision in the early 2000s took place maybe 6 or 8 years later when we essentially changed our front porch to Oklahoma State athletics through football. I'm just the guy that was lucky enough to be along for the ride. But when he changed that, by not taking no for an answer and having a vision, it affected everybody. We talk a lot about the donations. There's so many of them we can't even keep up with them. So many we don't know about. But the effect that he has had on Stillwater, the alumni from Oklahoma State, the pride that he has instilled in all of us, the community, the hospitals, the population, the property value of Stillwater, and the effects that he's had on us in general is astounding. I've been around Stillwater other than 5 years of my life since 1986. So I'm not conditioned to say that I know a lot about coaching football, but I am conditioned to say I know a lot about Stillwater because I've been here a long time and I know a lot of people and I've seen it grow and I've seen what's happened. None of this has changed as much as it has since he's got involved, obviously through Coach Holder and the gifts that he's given to football. It started it all, and it's going to be better than ever as we move forward because of his vision. Everybody's mentioned his ranch. The ranch, the times that I went to his ranch, when I look back, that's where I learned the most from Mr. Pickens, and I didn't even realize it. He was famous for his campfire settings, where he would gather everybody at the ranch that he wanted to listen to what they had to say, give his opinion, listen to what you had to say, and then tell you what to do. He did it over dinner. He did it over golf at his ranch. He did it over hunting, shooting skeet, fishing, great food, great people. But he had a way of instilling in all of us that were lucky enough to be there work ethic, find ways to solve a problem. I remember he told me one day, and I use this all the time. I use it at home with my 3 boys. I use it with the team. I use it with the coaching staff. I use it all the time. He said one time to me that we need problem solvers. Everybody knows how to create problems. We need to find ways to solve problems. I never forgot that. I use that all the time. He also told me out at the ranch, communication is vital for success with family, business, teams, doesn't make any difference. It's all the same. I didn't understand that. I wasn't the greatest communicator, probably still not the greatest communicator today. But what I did learn from him was communication gives us the opportunity to discuss issues we have, good or bad, find solutions, put a plan in place, like he said. People all use his quotes. An idiot with a plan is better off than a genius without one. I have that written and it's been on my desk. Our governor used the other one I have on my desk. You can't just aim. Eventually you got to fire. So all those things that have taken place at his ranch or he has given to us has a lasting effect forever on this university, because most people that he had relationships with were somehow tied in to Oklahoma State University. He would tell me, he would say, Mike, don't be afraid to take chances. People don't want to come to the games and watch you and your team just play. They want to see you take chances. It's good for you, it's good for your staff, it's good for your team. Never thought about that till he brought that up. Those days that we had at the ranch with our staff were pretty special, and we didn't know it was taking place. I have something else on my desk that he told me. He said, don't be predictable. And I said, what do you mean? I don't understand. He said, you can't be predictable if you're going to be in the business world. He said, I do the same thing you do. He said, I run companies. You coach a team. It's all the same. We're doing the same thing. We just do it a little different. Don't be predictable. If you want to be the best at what you do, don't be predictable. He told me one time that controversy is good. He said, if you have a little controversy and you instigate a little controversy, it makes people think. Makes people reach down deep and decide and make decisions and think about things, and makes everybody better. The grand opening of this stadium was, in my opinion, in the limited amount of time that I was around Mr. Pickens, the proudest that I've ever seen him of an accomplishment. The people up here sitting with me have been around him much more, but for me, that day that we opened this stadium, you saw it on the video, when he was able to cut that ribbon, we were all standing there with him over here on this side of the stadium, getting ready to unveil what essentially that his vision of 8 to 10 years ago, I don't know how far back before we finally got it, above my pay grade at that time, was taking place, and it had finally opened. I could see it in his face. I could see it in his eyes on the walk before the Georgia game. He had a feeling that was just different than I had ever seen. He was bursting with pride. And it was pride in his university, in the place that he loved, that he saw all the people outside that were tailgating. And most everybody here, other than the young people, know what's happened here on game days. We're fortunate enough to fill up our stadium all the time, and we still have thousands of people that are outside tailgating all over the lawns. That was started because of Mr. Pickens. Mr. Pickens generated all of this, and we just followed through, and we were fortunate enough to have some good players and win some games, and now it's better than it's ever been. But all that started in the early 2000s with his vision. His pride on that day was through the roof. OSU now was on top of the world with a football facility, with a stadium. And he had watched for so many years, and as he said, when he left the stadium, that he was looking down at the top of his shoes. And that wasn't just necessarily with games. A lot of that was because of everything that was here. So finally, he got to the top of the world facility-wise for his school, in the sport that he knew that had to have success to make everything run. We beat a good SEC team. They were a blue blood, traditional, rich football program. They had Matt Stafford at quarterback, who's still playing today. We beat him by 14 points, a game I didn't want to play. Coach Holder made me play it. I wanted to play a different school, but I said, you're putting a lot of pressure on me to open the stadium against a team like that. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. You can beat them. And we beat him by 14 points, and they were a good team. And he was so proud. And we were thankful. I personally was very appreciative of that we could accomplish that for him. So I talked earlier about his body of work and what it's done for Stillwater, all the different things, the chain reaction and what he's caused with all the success that we've had. And look at the facilities that Ms. Greenwood, she even spoke about. Look what he's done to instigate between him and Coach Holder and President Hargis and the regents and a lot of people involved. I just know about a few. But the main people that had a vision, he instigated all of that and got everybody else to say, we can do that. We can build a tennis center. We can build a track. We can build a women's soccer stadium. We can build a baseball facility, and so on and so forth, just because of his vision. In conclusion for me, personally, other than seeing him the day we opened the stadium, my best memory of Mr. Pickens was a few years ago when I went to Dallas to visit with him. At that time, he was very healthy and vibrant, like always. I sat at the table, and we had a great 3-hour conversation, just one-on-one, just he and I, where 2.5 hours he did the talking, and 30 minutes I did the talking. But we had a really good conversation, and I felt like that there were several things that he and I agreed to disagree on, but we could sit down as two people who had one topic, and that was what could we do to continue the success of the university that we love? How can we find a way to make it better? And he said that. He said, whether you and I get along with everything or agree on everything, it's not what's important. What's important is what can we do to make the university better as a group, as partners. He wanted us to be competitive without cheating. He said, I want you to play by the rules, which he's always said that. He said, don't sacrifice integrity for wins. For a coach, that gave me some peace. We have a lot of pressure to win in games, but when a man of his stature who is built the stadium, become the most powerful force with the university, he says, I want to be competitive. I want to come to the games and be competitive, and I want you to play by the rules. If you do that, then I'll be your supporter. If you don't play by the rules, I won't be a supporter. That's pretty powerful. And I'd always remembered that and was very appreciative of that. So to Mr. Pickens' family and all the loved ones and the group that's been with him forever, I say thank you for allowing him the time on such a demanding schedule. And you guys always worked hard. I know how with Sally and Jay and all of you guys, how hard you had to work at times to get him steered in the right direction for the well-being for Oklahoma State. Because in the end, when he got here, he never forgot where he came from in Holdenville. He never forgot Oklahoma, and he never forgot Stillwater. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Coach Gundy. You know, Boone would want me to tell you, beat K-State, all right? So let's beat K-State, right? And he would want me to tell you, fill her up. So fill her up on Saturday. We'll see you at Boone Pickens Stadium. I want you to, real quickly, just say a little prayer for our next speaker. This is not going to be easy for him. You see, he's going to be talking about and honoring his mentor, a father figure, and his best friend. But we all know that he's going to do him proud. Please welcome our athletic director, Mike Holder.
Thank you. Ooh, got a little feedback. I was doing pretty good till Larry said that. You know, that light up there in the corner is pretty bright. That's what it's like when Boone casts his gaze on you. Trust me. Everybody out there that knew him well, they understand that. I don't know that I could do justice to the man that I call my best friend. He's like a father to me. I've known I had to do this for a couple of years. Haven't looked forward to it. And I've thought a lot about what I would say, and I can honestly tell you, I have no idea what's about to come out of my mouth. But just know this, it's from the heart. I met Boone Pickens in 1973. 1973 was a big year for me, my family. I just graduated from OSU in 1970. I got a graduate degree in 1973, an MBA. That's a miracle in and of itself. That's a long story. I won't go into that one, but it just shows that anybody can get a graduate degree, I promise you. And Coach Harris, who was my golf coach, encouraged me to apply for the golf coaching job, and I had no interest in that. And I was going to go play the PGA Tour and make millions of dollars, and I don't know why I thought that, but I think every youngster that plays whatever sport he's playing or she's playing, think they're going to make a lot of money doing it because they love it. But he suggested I apply for the golf job, and he pestered me until I did it, and somehow they offered it to me, and I thought, well, I must be pretty special, till I found out why they offered it to me, which was it was only paying $6,500, and even in 1973, that wasn't very much money. And the other two finalists to the job definitely couldn't take it for that amount of money. They had families and established jobs and all that. So I got that job, and in that fall, a friend who I had met while he was taking golf lessons from Coach Harris. Coach Harris is the kind of guy that anything to make a buck, and he was ready to give a golf lesson to anybody. So Jerry Walsh, who was in the mud business in Borger, Texas, who's from Stillwater, OSU graduate, had a sister, still lived in Stillwater. He'd come back and visit her, and essentially that meant he let his wife talk to his sister all day, and he'd go out and take a golf lesson from Laban Harris. And I was always there with Coach Harris, kind of like in the shadow, so I got to know Jerry Walsh. And after I got the job, he was probably as shocked as me that I got it, and he came by to visited me. I think my office was up here in the south end of this arena. Maybe it was over here on the floor level. I can't remember. I've had an office in every corner of this building one time or another. But he came by and he said, you know, you probably need a little help, young man. I said, yes, sir, I need a lot of help. I have no clue what I'm about to get into. He said, well, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, yeah, we want to have a great program, and my mentor did a great job with very little, but I'm not as good as him. In this budget of $27,000 they gave me, which includes scholarships, team travel, my salary, you name it, it's on the list. That's not going to give us a chance to contend for national championships, and I got big dreams. And he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, we're going to have a Pro-Am fundraiser this fall. Would you come play? And he said, sure, I'll come play. Would you be a sponsor? Well, absolutely. He didn't even ask me how much. I think it was probably a couple $100. And he shows up that fall, 1973, and he's got two of his best friends with him, Sherman Smith and Boone Pickens. And little did I know how big a deal that was. And so after they left, I thought, Boone Pickens, I think he has a CEO of a big company. Let me study up on him. So I read a little bit about him, and I thought, you know, if he thinks enough of me and Oklahoma State golf to invest his time and money in our future, then I should feel the same way about him. And so I told my wife we were going to buy some stock in Mesa Petroleum now. She said, first of all, why? And second of all, with what? And I think that I managed to carve enough money out of the bank account. She's pretty good with that bank account, was then, still is, to buy 100 shares of that stock. And I wrote Boone a thank you note for being willing to come to our Pro-Am, and then I told him that I was invested in his company. And I invested consistently every year, and he invested consistently in OSU golf. I got a great return on my investment. I think he got a great return on his investment because we won a lot of national championships in the next few years. There's a bunch of banners up here to back it up. Thank you. I'll take that applause as credit to all the great players I had because it certainly wasn't my doing as a coach. I did a lot of good recruiting though. But between 1973 and 1995, 22 years, I really didn't know Boone Pickens much beyond that chance meeting every year in the Pro-Am. Because from 1973 to this last year, he never missed one, 46 years in a row. And he brought Sherman Smith and Jerry Walsh with him. Jerry Walsh never missed until 1995, when November 19th, he and his wife Jane were killed in a car wreck out by Amarillo on Interstate 40. And that was a really, really tough loss for me, but especially for Boone. That was his best friend. He talked to him every morning, first thing. And if he ever had a question about what somebody's name was or where they were from or what kind of business they had, all he had to do was pick up the phone, call Jerry, and Jerry had the answer. He remembered everybody's name. He knew what everybody did. He was like the Encyclopedia Britannica. He was Google before we had the internet, trust me. And so all of a sudden, boom, Jerry's gone. And I never will forget after that funeral, and I was visiting with Boone a little bit, and he said, why don't you come out, spend some time when we're at the ranch, we'll hunt a little bit of quail. Well, I wasn't a quail hunter. But I knew that he needed somebody, so I took that opportunity to have an invitation, and I started going to what was at that time the 2B Ranch to hunt quail. Little did I know what I was about to experience. And from 1995 until 2000, probably one of the tougher times in his life, lost his best friend. He went through a divorce. He lost that company, Mesa Petroleum, that he had built from nothing. He started BP Capital because he was a really good commodities trader with the help of Ron Bassett, his CFO there at Mesa. They had started trading commodities, natural gas and oil futures about 10 years prior to that, and they'd never lost money any single year. They managed to cover all the operating expenses for the company for those 10 years just off his ability to trade commodity futures. So he thought, I'm pretty good at this. He started that company, BP Capital, raised $37 million in assets. He thought he'd get a lot more, but he found that there wasn't a lot of people interested in investing with a 68-year-old has-been from the oil business. He did have John Cox, one of his good friends, and Harold Simmons and Sherman Smith, whose name on this building across the street. They invested with him. And then in 97 and 98, he proceeded to lose 90% of that equity. Never experienced losing before, and pretty hard for him to deal with. And so in that period of time, I was there with him. Neither one of us had a whole lot of money. Relative to me, he had a lot, but relative to what he'd had and what he was yet to come, not very much. But I can't tell you how much I look forward to that phone call when he would say, can you come hunt? And he didn't have a corporate plane anymore, so when he gave me the invitation, I got in that van that OSU gave me for the golf team, and I headed west, and he'd get on the company plane, Southwest Airlines, and fly to Amarillo, and then get in the Suburban they left for him there and drive up to the ranch. And I would get there before him, and he said, something's not right about this, how you're beating me here. And I would get to hunt quail with him. And, you know, hunting quail with Boone Pickens and spending time there at that ranch, I can't tell you how special that was. I think back to when I was in school, and I got here as a freshman. I lived over here in Bennett Hall, and my golf coach, Laban Harris, who I consider to be the greatest coach ever in any sport, he took me from nothing to a pretty darn good player by sheer force of will. And I would get out of class, have lunch at Bennett Hall, and I couldn't wait to get to that golf course and practice side by side with him. And then you could go to the first tee and put up 25 cents, and if you could beat him, he'd give you a brand new golf ball. He kept the money no matter what. And if you didn't beat him, then you got a little bit of ribbon along with it, and then he welcomed you to come back out there at the practice tee, and he'd try to show you what you did wrong. And I couldn't wait to get out there every day and take a licking from that guy. And he beat me every single day for my freshman year, probably my sophomore year, and I don't know what it was inside me that made me want to go back out there every day. But finally, I got to where I was as good as him physically, and then the psychological warfare started. And if I got close to beating him, he'd just talk me out of it. So I tell you that because that's the way I felt about going to the ranch with Boone Pickens. He was a CEO of a major oil company, but trust me, he was a coach. He was a coach with hunting quail. He was a life coach. I don't know what was better, the quail hunting or the dinners and the conversations, the George the talking dog, the cowboy and the rattlesnake, bullfrog and the scorpion. I've already bought the car. I could go on and on. Don't look in the sack. All those people at BP Capital know about looking in the sack. And I got to admit, on Saturday, down there in Austin, Texas, at halftime, I was so proud of our football team because we've been stressing discipline all year. And I realized we had 0 penalties that first half. So I go in there at halftime, 21-20, and I see Mac Butler, our operations guy, in the urinal. Not a good place to have a conversation to start with. And I said, Mac, I'm going to do something I shouldn't. I'm going to look in the sack. I'm knocking on wood. All bets are off. But did you realize we've had no penalties the first half? He said, no, I didn't. Well, you know what happened the second half? We had 9 penalties. Don't look in the sack. Don't look at the scoreboard. So I got a lesson in life, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But now I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to hunt quail with Boone Pickens. For me, a golfer, it's like playing in the conference championship. It's like playing in the NCAA championship. It's like playing at Augusta National. I've never played in the Masters. I could imagine what that would be like. When you got ready to get in that hunt truck, or even before that, when you got in the gun room and you looked up there on the dry roost board and they had the number of birds killed every single year on the ranch, and you knew that when you got in that hunt truck, they were going to have that scoreboard out there, and you're putting on your gaiters and you're getting ready and the conversation's getting pretty serious. You load up in that hunt truck and you got Keith Boone in the front seat, you got Fonzie on the passenger side, you got 8 bird dogs in the back, you got 2 retrievers, and you got Boone Pickens sitting to the left of you. Game on, trust me. And I figured out real fast that I better get better at hitting quail or this wasn't going to work very well. So just like my coach, Laban Harris, he lifted me up. He taught me how to shoot quail. And he told me, when you know if it's a cock or a hen, you'll finally be able to hit them. And I had no clue what he was talking about. I didn't know the difference between a cock and a hen. And after about 2 or 3 hunts, I got a little more curious, and he was calling it. He'd say, after we shooting stop, he'd say, I got a cock on the left and a hen on the right. So when you picked up the cock, you knew where to look for the hen. And finally, he told me how to tell the difference. And he was right. Within a year, 2 years, I could tell you if I shot a cock or a hen. So when you got on the truck, the dogs knew what was up. The pointers knew it was game on, and they better be good at pointing. You better not bust any coveys, and you better be able to hunt dead. The 2 labs knew exactly what it was, and mainly their job was to clean up my mess, because only one thing worse than missing a bird was crippling one, and I was really good at that. And I still hear Boone's voice in my head. nothing slows down a hunt more than looking for your crippled birds. So center them in the pattern. If you do that, all you got to do is bend over and pick them up. We don't have to look for your crippled birds. But that one lab, Rojo, he was a master at cleaning up my mess. And then Keith and Fonzie in the front knew that up there on that sheet of paper on the dashboard, which was a scoreboard, on the right you had the number of coveys you found. That's their job. On the left is the number of birds in the bag. That's the 200's job. And the dreaded middle column was cripples. And you didn't want any part of that column. And unfortunately, I spent way too much time in that cripple portion. So those 5 years were the greatest 5 years of my life. I would go back there tomorrow. Somebody asked me today if you had to pick when to go back and spend time with Boone Pickens. I want to go back before all the money and all the success, and I want to go back and hunt quail at the 2B Ranch when we were on the east side of Highway 70, when life was simpler and we didn't have all those cell phones. And when you got there, it was all about the hunting and the conversation. And he changed my whole life in those 5 years, the way I viewed it, the way I thought about my job, the way I thought about the world, the way I thought about money, the way I thought about success, the way I treated people. And all of it was because mostly the way he treated me and treated everybody around him at the ranch, he treated everybody as equal. He was really a giant among men that acted like the common man. So I look back and you see all that we've done together, all the fun things that we experienced together. You hear about all the donations. You see the metamorphosis of our university, of our football program, of our athletic program. And you get back down to why. And I think it's just plain and simply that competitive spirit between two guys that had a common bond with Oklahoma State University, and we were tired of watching us play football in a rusted out relic of a football stadium with a football program to match. And we dreamed about it and talked about it when neither one of us could do anything about it but have conversation. And then in 2000, when he started making some money, the seed was planted to do something about it. So it's been great, the transformation. But more importantly, in my opinion, has been the example he set for us and the mandate he gave us when he gave the money, which is work hard, play by the rules, and dream big. You don't have to cheat to win in life, business, or athletics. And if you do in that way, it's a hollow victory. And if you do it, you're going to lose your best supporter. And it really makes me feel good to hear our football coach talk about how significant that was. To talk about it, to say that's the mandate. Forget our history here of NCAA transgressions. That's in the rearview mirror. We're going to stand for something bigger. And that's what higher education should be about, changing lives and making dreams come true. So as I reflect on what he did for me, the lessons that I learned, I did a little exercise this summer, which I think is appropriate today. And what I'm about to say is that as though Boone were speaking through me. I've got a favorite quote, which is, if youth knew, if age could. You think about that a minute. What would I tell Mike Holder at 18 years of age? I'm 71 today. And first off, I don't know at 18 that I would listen to Mike Holder at 71. Some old guy with some advice. I'd much rather talk to Greer Jones and get advice from him at 18 because he was beating me every day out there on the golf course, and that's what mattered to me. I wanted to know what he knew that I didn't know. But this is what I would say to Mike Holder at 18 years of age, and I learned this from Boone. First off, what you dream about, what you think about, what you talk about, what you work for will happen. This is the greatest country in the world. You can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. So if you're a student here at Oklahoma State, dream big. Take a big swing. You just never know. You might change the world. The second thing, and he loved to talk about this, he said there's 3 things you ask yourself before you take advice from somebody. First thing, are they smart? Do they know what they're talking about? That's a lot of people do. Second thing, do they care about me and love me? Now you're narrowing the field down. And the third one, which gets most of us, do they have a conflict of interest? So if you're an athlete in the world today and you're pretty good, the last person you should ever take any advice from is an agent. Because if there is a conflicted group of people in the world, it is a sports agent. So really, really good advice. The third thing was, you can't buy anything of real value with money. Money's a convenience. Money's a luxury. You can buy a lot of things that make life more comfortable. Really, about the only thing that you can buy of real value with it is maybe access to health care when you need it. But other than that, all the things that have real value in life, like honesty, integrity, your work ethic, any success you've earned, love, friendship, loyalty, just start going down the list. You can't buy those. They're not for sale at Tiffany's or Walmart. You get those the old-fashioned way. Hopefully they're instilled in you by mom and dad or somewhere along the way. Some of us aren't blessed, or some youngsters aren't blessed with a mother and a father, or maybe it's a coach, someone. You've got to learn it somewhere. So those things of real value aren't for sale. You're not for sale, and those things aren't for sale. But money follows those qualities. So when it shows up, don't let it corrupt the values that really matter, that got you where you were. Don't let it pull you down. And if you're blessed with wealth, be a giver, not a taker. Do good with it. Try to change the world. And if ever anybody took that to heart, it was Boone Pickens. I saw an interview or a speech given by Jerry Jones, and he said Boone Pickens was making money with his right hand and giving it away almost as fast as he made it with his left hand. There's never been anybody more generous than Boone. And then the other thing was health. Invest in health. Health's the most valuable thing in the whole world. You can do anything with it. Without it, you can't do anything. And the last couple of years with Boone have been really challenging with that. So do something. And he invested every day in his good health. But at some point in time, it's going to come to the end for all of us. And then the last thing, which speaks to the coach and me, Boone, and everybody, what would I tell my younger coaching self? I would say, treat every one of those athletes like it's you. Tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Do unto them as you would have them do unto you. Lift them up. Teach them to dream big. Teach them that they're capable of doing anything. And you do it more by example than what's coming out of your mouth, because that rings hollow very quickly. You say one thing, do another, they're going to stop listening to you. So lead by example, and he was the best ever at that. In closing, when he gave the big gift, we've got a quote down in the west end zone. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We've kind of put it away in a place that the players hang out, but no one else sees. And I'll paraphrase it. It says, we built the best to be the best. Now all that's left is to win games and fill her up. And we're not filling it up. So the challenge is, you're there to take the money and all that means. It's no different than when I signed the best player in the world, and I've done it multiple times. It's not over when they sign the letter of intent. That's not the end game. That's the beginning. And you need to understand the responsibility that comes along with taking an athlete like that. You owe him the same commitment that he brings, the same sacrifices as he's willing to make. You owe him the experience that he could have gotten anywhere else. I don't care if it's Stanford or Texas, you name it. You need to do right by that athlete. Well, the same thing with Boone Pickens. When you take the money, there's a responsibility that comes along with it. And he put the facility out here, and he set the standard for the behavior. That gives you a chance to recruit. Recruiting's up to the coaches, though. Get out there, beat the bushes, bring the best and the brightest in here, and then the athletes have to do their part. And then you get a winning team. So you take the facility, the winning team that's doing it the right way, and then you fill up the stadium. That's when the magic happens. And Boone used to talk all the time about, let's show them a white blackbird. Bobby Stilwell's heard that. Ron Bassett's heard that. Jay Rosser's heard that. Sally Geimer's heard that. He never showed me one, but I thought we were close. And I always thought that I was going to see it tomorrow. So what I'd like for us to do, let's show Boone a white blackbird. What does that look like? Let's fill up this football stadium every weekend. Let's fill up Gallagher Arena. Let's fill up that new O'Brate Stadium in baseball. And let's watch the magic happen. Let's show them a white blackbird. Thank you.
Great job, Coach. We appreciate you for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Cowboy fans, one and all, let's close this celebration the way we close all of our celebrations, and that's arm in arm with our alma mater. And I want you to please remain standing after the alma mater. Poe Capella is going to come out and lead us in that. Remain standing because we're going to do a couple of cheers for Boone, and then we'll have our fight songs, and we'll wrap up our celebration here of T. Boone Pickens. So once again, Poe Capella.
Proud and immortal, bright shines your name, Oklahoma State. We herald your fame. Ever you'll find us loyal and true to our alma mater, OSU.
Thank you, Poe Capella. You guys sound great. We're proud that you are here with us today. All right, we're going to try something new, all right? Boone was proud and immortal. We just sang about that. Let's honor him. We always do Orange Power, so we're going to try something different today, all right? This side of the arena is Boone, and this side of the arena is Pickens. The greatest mascot in America is here to help. He's going to follow up with the OSU cheer after that. But 4 times, I want to hear it. Boone over here and Pickens over here. On the count of 3, ready? 1, 2, 3. Boone. That sounds great. All right, lead us off, Pete. Oh. Thank you so much for being here today to honor a great Oklahoma State Cowboy and T. Boone Pickens. We hope you'll join us in the East Lobby for a reception. And thank you once again for helping us honor our very own T. Boone Pickens. Thank you.